Ahoj, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vás učím česky. Hello and welcome to my channel Czech by Zuzka, where I teach you Czech. As you might know, I've been focusing on Czech verb prefixes, and this video's topic is not going to be any different from the last week. We are going to have a look at the prefix z or ze, the verb prefix z or ze. These two are actually the same, but the second one, ze, is the vocalized version. We vocalize some prepositions or prefixes for a better pronunciation. You might know that in Czech we just don't like vowels so much, but here we give you an extra one. The function of the verb prefix z is actually quite straightforward. It's not as complex as the previous prefixes. So I'm going to divide this video in fewer categories, and let's start right now. Jdeme na to. When you see the prefix z or ze, the function is clear, as I said. This prefix will either give us information about completing the action or that something changed or turned into something else. So the two main categories are completed action and a change of state. Maybe some verbs from this category could also belong to the second category. That's up to you to decide. Remembering which verb goes into which category is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to realize what this prefix can mean, and then remembering a couple of examples that you like. So in this video, I'm going to give you enough examples so you can get a full picture of this prefix, and then you can again pick your favorite phrases and learn them. One important note is that you should not confuse this prefix with a prefix za, because za is a different prefix. Because we also have two different prepositions, right? We have the preposition z or ze and za, which often means behind. One of the most important verbs from this category is změnit, which means to change, to finish changing. If you take away the prefix, we get měnit, which also means to change, but it's imperfective, to be changing. I could say měníme plán, we're changing the plan as we speak, or we often change a plan, často měníme plán. But if I say změníme, it's a completed action. In this case, it would be the future tense. For example, musíme změnit plán. We have to change the plan. You can repeat it with me. Musíme změnit plán. We have to change the plan. You might know the noun změna, which would be a change. Změna. Změna programu. A change of program of an event. Zopakovat, also an important verb. This means to repeat. A very useful phrase for you is a question. Můžete to zopakovat? Can you repeat it? Můžete to zopakovat? Můžete to prosím zopakovat? If somebody speaks too quickly or you're not sure you understood, so you say, can you please repeat it? And although opakovat is probably the verb that you know, that you start learning, in fact, I always start teaching my students this verb when they learn the present tense, because that is the imperfective verb. When you say opakuju, it means I repeat or I am repeating. For example, somebody tells you, sejdeme se v 17 hodin. What? Můžete to zopakovat? That is the correct reaction. If you said, můžete to opakovat, this would mean, can you keep repeating, please? Then I would say, sejdeme se v 17 hodin. Sejdeme se v 17 hodin. Sejdeme se v 17 hodin. Ještě? Sejdeme se v 17 hodin. Can you be repeating it? However, when we put the prefix zopakovat, we talk about the completed action, and we mean, can you just repeat it once? And of course, we can use the past tense too. Zopakovala jsem ti to. I repeated it for you. Zvládnout is also a very handy verb. This means to manage. It can be about a skill. It can be about a situation. to manage something, to be in control of yourself, and therefore you would be able to manage something. When you look at this verb itself, vládnout means to govern, to rule, like the rulers, the king, král vládne, the king rules. From that we have vláda, the government. So vládnout. But when we say zvládnout, it kind of changes the meaning a little bit. You end up governing your skills and then you manage something. Imagine your friend is traveling overseas, really, really far away. They're nervous. You can tell them, neboj, to zvládneš. Don't worry, you will manage. Neboj, to zvládneš. So, to zvládneš is you will manage. So these were kind of neutral or positive meanings, and these are a little bit negative. Zničit is to destroy. Ničit is the imperfective verb to be destroying. Zničit is to end up destroying completely. Imagine you have a new puppy, and this puppy likes to chew shoes. And then one day the puppy destroys all your shoes. Naše štěně mi zničilo všechny boty. Our puppy destroyed all my shoes. Naše štěně mi zničilo všechny boty. We talk about the action which is completed. The shoes are already destroyed. Zlomit is to break completely. You might remember from my first video on prefixes where I talk about ulomit, and that was just to break a little part. Zlomit is to break completely. I can show you very easily. Don't worry, I'm not gonna be breaking any of my markers. Tohle je čínská hůlka. This is a Chinese chopstick. I'm gonna break it. Zlomím čínskou hůlku. Zlomila jsem čínskou hůlku. I broke the Chinese chopstick. Je zlomená, it's broken. Zlomím, I will break. Zlomila jsem, I broke. I guess that was enough for demonstrating what zlomit means. Also be aware that this verb often goes together with the reflexive pronoun se or si. So zlomit plus an object is that you break something, and se would be that something broke itself. So I would say zlomila se čínská hůlka. It broke. It was not me. To jsem já nebyla. Nebo zlomit si, to break something that belongs to you, usually a body part, bone. Spadl a zlomil si ruku. He fell and he broke his arm. Zlomil si ruku. He broke his arm. He broke the arm to himself. Ještě jednou. Spadl a zlomil si ruku. By the way, ruka is this part. Paže is this part, the arm. But sometimes colloquially we say ruka and we mean all this. Zlomila jsem si ruku. Nobody is going to tell you zlomila jsem si paži, although it's proper, more proper. But zlomit si ruku means to break your arm or hand, and you have to specify it. And one thing to keep in mind, zlomit really means to do this movement, to fracture something. Fracture the chopstick, zlomit hůlku, zlomit kost, to break the bone. But if something shatters, then it's rozbít, so that's a different verb. Zrušit. Zrušit means to cancel. Kvůli počasí jsme oslavu zrušili. Due to the weather, we cancelled the celebration. Ještě jednou, můžete to po mně zopakovat. Kvůli počasí jsme oslavu zrušili. Zmrznout, this means to completely freeze, zmrznout. The funny thing is, we would not use this verb for freezing food or anything that you want to put in the freezer to freeze it. For that we would use zmrazit, also with this prefix, zmrazit. And zmrznout is the action, what happened, that something froze. It's not cold yet, but when it's very cold outside, sometimes you can feel that your hands are so frozen that they feel like they're froze completely. So you would say, je taková zima, že mi zmrzly ruce. It's so cold that my hands froze. Je taková zima, že mi zmrzly ruce. And from this verb, You also might know the word zmrzlina, which is something frozen, and that is ice cream. Zmrzlina comes from this verb, zmrznout. And by the way, mrznout would be to be freezing. Venku mrzne, it's freezing outside. Nebo mrznou mi ruce. My hands are freezing. Zemřít is to die. And also, I told you the verb umřít. And they're both the same. Zemřít, umřít, they mean die. They both come from an old Czech verb mřít, which is not used anymore, which was the imperfective verb to die, mřít. Nobody uses it anymore. If you say umřít, it's more informal. Zemřít is more formal and therefore more appropriate for certain situations. So whenever you read a biography of a famous person, they would use zemřít, zemřel. For example, this lady, this is Božena Němcová, and she was a Czech writer living in the 19th century. Božena Němcová zemřela v roce 1862. Božena Němcová died in the year of 1862. Zemřela v roce 1862. And now the second category, which is very specific for this prefix, is the change of state, the condition. And this would often correspond to the English translation get, like to get slow or to get dry, to get red, or turn into something. For example, zhubnout. Zhubnout means to lose weight, literally to get skinny. Verbs from this category often come directly from the adjectives. For example, this would be from hubený. Hubený, skinny. And zhubnout is to get skinny, to lose weight. Jana chce zhubnout 5 kilo. Jana wants to lose 5 kilos. Jana chce zhubnout. You can practice the verb zhubnout because I think it might be a little bit challenging with this combination z and h. Zhubnout, zhubnout. Jana chce zhubnout 5 kilo. And on the other hand, we could also have stloustnout, to literally get fat. So it's not a very proper verb, but it comes from the adjective tlustý, so stloustnout. And here we can also see how the pronunciation changed because we have zhubnout, this is pronounced as z, and stloustnout, this is pronounced as s. Stloustnout, because it was affected by the T, which is voiceless, so stloustnout and zhubnout. Zčervenat, another one where we have s, it's to get red, to turn red. Whether we speak about fruit, that the cherries got red, třešně zčervenaly, or somebody's face turned red. Zčervenal mu obličej, his face turned red. And again, it comes from the adjective červený. Červený, red. Zčervenat, turn red. And this change also applies to other colors. Besides zčervenat, we can also have zčernat, to turn black. Sfialovět, to turn purple. Zmodrat, to turn blue. Zbělet or zbělat, to turn white. Zezelenat, to turn green. Zežloutnout, to turn yellow. And so on. Zlevnit, to become cheap or make cheap. Zlevnili jsme pro vás zboží. We discounted the goods for you. We made them cheaper. Zlevnit. Zlevnit comes from the adjective levný, inexpensive. Zlevnit, to make things less expensive. Ještě jednou. Zlevnili jsme pro vás zboží. Zpomalit, this is pronounced as S, zpomalit, to slow down. Videa na YouTube si můžete zpomalit. You can slow the speed of the videos here on YouTube. You can slow them down. Videa na YouTube si můžete zpomalit. Sečteme, kolik nás bude. And the adjective is pomalý, slow. Zpomalit, to slow down. Also when you drive. If you're driving too fast, somebody will tell you zpomal. Or even actually the speedboard will tell you zpomal if you go over 50 in a village, for example. Zpomal. But remember, it's pronounced with s. Zpomal. Zbláznit se. This means to get crazy, to turn into a crazy person or to go crazy. If you think you're going crazy, you say, já se z toho zblázním. I'm going to go crazy from this. And you mean that this will be something that will turn you into a crazy person. Of course, metaphorically, but it can also mean literally. In fact, we even have a comedy.
Neber úplatky, nebo se z toho zblázníš.
Já nevím, co s tím. Já vlastně nevím, co s tím. Já se z toho zblázním.
No prosím.
Můžete to po mně zopakovat? Já se z toho zblázním. Já se z toho zblázním. And this actually comes from a noun blázen, fool. Also you could say bláznivý, the adjective bláznivý, crazy, foolish. And there are a lot more examples, a lot of combinations in this category, also in the previous category. As usual, you can find more examples in my additional worksheet, which you can purchase for €1, and you can also practice with some exercises. I also added another category which I called other examples. These verbs would not exactly fall into the previous categories, although they all contain this prefix z. But the journey from the original word, the original stem, was a little bit longer, more complex, so now it's not so clear how they became what they are, what they mean now. The verb zjistit is to find out. Zjistit. For example, zjistit, co se děje. Find out what's going on. Zjisti, co se děje. We could say that this is from the adjective jistý, certain, or sure of something. So zjistit is to become certain of something, and therefore you find out. So here we pronounce it as z, zjistit. And the following one is skusit, where we pronounce it as s, skusit. This means to try something. Zkusím tam zavolat. I'll try to call there. Zkusím tam zavolat. I also added the imperfective counterpart, and that is zkoušet, to be trying. Zkoušela jsem tam volat, ale nikdo to nebral. I tried to call, but nobody was answering. Zkoušela jsem tam volat, ale nikdo to nebral. A poslední, the last one, zhasnout. Zhasnout again. This combination z and the h is to turn off the light. Zhasni prosím v koupelně. Please turn off the light in the bathroom. Zhasni prosím v koupelně. Or it's enough even to say zhasni. Zhasni means turn off the light. You don't have to say světlo, which means the light. You just simply say zhasni. And it's clear that we want to say turn off the light. It's specifically for light only. I added one more category where I would like to remind you that the prefix z is different from the prefix s, and sometimes very different. I also told you in my previous video about this prefix that it's also challenging for Czech people, sometimes to remember or to recognize where to write z and where to write s, because sometimes they sound identical. I give you examples of homophones, and what I wrote here on the board are verbs that have the same base but a different prefix, and therefore they are different. But these are not homophones, they're actually read differently. I hope you will be able to recognize the difference. Let's see the first pair. Změnit, změnit, směnit, směnit. And what is the difference? Změnit is to simply change something, to change the situation, make a change. Směnit is to change for something else, usually money. Směnit peníze, to exchange money. That's why we have směnárna, an exchange office. Musíme změnit plán, we have to change the plan. Musíme změnit plán. Potřebuju směnit peníze, I have to exchange the money. Potřebuju směnit peníze. Zvolit a svolit. Zvolit, svolit. Zvolit, svolit. The first one, zvolit, is to elect. Volit is to vote and zvolit is to end up voting to elect somebody. Not only in politics, but also to make a choice to elect something. There would be a very formal version. And svolit is a formal verb to agree. Svolit. V lednu roku 2023 si Češi zvolí nového prezidenta. In January of 2023, the Czech people will elect their new president. Nakonec svolil k odjezdu. He finally agreed to the departure. He agreed to leave. We often use this verb with the preposition k. Svolit k něčemu and dative. Svolit k odjezdu, to agree with the departure. A poslední, zhlédnout a shlédnout. Actually. Zhlédnout. Zhlédnout is a little bit archaic verb, very formal verb, to watch. And zhlédnout is to look down. And it's also a little bit archaic. So this would mean that somebody is looking down. Remember the prefix s often has function of direction down or together. And this would be looking down. Zhlédnout. Zhlédli jsme film. We watched a movie, but that would be a little too formal. If I wanted to say thank you for watching, I could say děkuji za zhlédnutí. A little bit too formally said. Zhlédnout. Zhlédli jsme z hradu do krajiny. We looked down from the castle to see the landscape. We were on the tower of the castle and we were looking down around in the countryside. If you would like more practice and you would like to learn more examples, check out my worksheet. You will find the link below the video. I hope that you enjoyed this video and you will find these examples practical. To je ode mě všechno. This is all from me. Přeju vám krásný den. Ahoj!